Thank you very much. This is a trial that should have never been brought. I'd say trial that is being looked upon, looked at all over the world. They're calling that they're looking at it, and analyzing every legal pundit, every legal scholar said. This trial is a disgrace. We have a Trump-hating judge. We have a judge who should be on this case. He's totally conflicted. But this is a trial that you've never thrown out. A long time ago, if you look at Jonathan Turley, Andy McCarthy, all great legal scholars, is not one that we've been able to find. That said, this should be a trial. I called I was paying a lawyer and marked it down as a legal expense, some account. I didn't know. Marked it down as a legal expense. That's exactly what it was. And you right now, in Pennsylvania and Florida and many other states, North Carolina, Georgia, campaigning. This is all coming from the Bike White House. Because the God can't put two sentences together. He can't campaigns in order to try and win an election. And it's not working that way. It's working the opposite way. So check that out. Legally expenses. Nobody has ever seen anything like it. So thank you very much for coming. I'm now going to sit down video, and the judge should accused tell you what it must be a special kind of fun being Donald Trump's lawyer, because you don't even have to worry about prosecutors, Trump himself, as he confessing to crimes, without the help of anyone. He says, here I paid a lawyer and marked his own as a legal expense. Yeah, small problem. Those payments were illegally classified by Trump as legal expenses when, in reality, they were campaign expenses, and that is quite literally a crime. Here's how this worked. The hush money payments were made in an effort to hide or secrete unflattering information, namely to affairs that Trump had with both Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels from American Voters, ahead of the election. The payments themselves, which were made by Michael Cohen behalf, violated two campaign finance laws. One was an unlawful campaign contribution for Cohen's involvement, orchestrating a payment from ME to McDougal, and the other is an excessive campaign contribution for the payment to Daniels. Then, in order to hide those payments from the voters, Trump's business records were falsified to cover up hush money payments, classifying them as legal expenses when they were not legal expenses, and because they were doing it in furtherance of a campaign finance violation that bumps up the charges from misdemeanors, felonies. And while Donald Trump will try to play dumb here, he was well aware of what was happening, and that's because Cohen recorded at least one conversation with Trump regarding the payment to Stormy Daniels, in which they can be heard discussing whether to make the payment in cash. Trump then, of course, corroborated Cohen's involvement by basically admitting to it on Twitter.com with a tweet that said, quote, Mr. Cohen, an attorney, received a monthly retainer, not from the campaign, and having nothing to do with the campaign, from which he entered into through reimbursement, a private contract between two parties, known as a non-disclosure agreement or NDA, and while he contends that the payments had nothing to do with the campaign, those of us with a pulse can recognize why Trump might suddenly want to pay off porn stars and playmates, who he had affairs with ahead of his presidential run. Not exactly rocket science to figure this stuff out. There's also the fact that Michael Cohen literally went to prison for making these payments at the direction of Donald Trump, so the notion that to get locked up for making payments that were directed by Trump, but that Trump himself is somehow innocent here, defies all basic logic. Here's my Democracy Watch co-host Mark Elias discussing that exact issue. Yeah, look, this is the one place where I actually can't believe I'm gonna say I agree with Michael Cohen on something, but it's really shameful that the federal prosecutors didn't prosecute Donald Trump. You know, I'm not gonna join into the whole where was Merrick Garland, because I actually don't think I didn't even do the Merrick Garland. I think this was a Southern District of New York. They make their own prosecution decisions around this, but it is inexplicable how it was that Michael Cohen, who was the lawyer who arranged for these checks to be delivered, wound up being prosecuted, but Donald Trump, who was his client and who actually signed the checks, wasn't. I think that there is that is going to be history, is going to look back on that and not just find it curious, good, going to say that was actually kind of like the original sin of failing to treat seriously the crime is Donald Trump had committed, because that case could have been brought a long time ago, and it would have been a slam dunk. So look, when Trump claims that he merely paid a lawyer for a legal expense, he is confessing insofar as the amount was indeed paid to Michael Cohen. What he's conveniently leaving out is that he falsified business records to classify that hush money payment as a legal expense when in fact, it was a campaign expense intended to keep some women quiet for affairs that he didn't want to hurt him. Ahead of the election, he might try to play dumb, but the only dumb person here is the guy who managed to get himself charged with 34 felony counts in a New York criminal trial. Of course, Trump tries to defend himself here by claiming that no legal scholar even believed that this case should be brought. So I spoke with an actual legal scholar here again. Is Mark Elias. You know, Trump is also claiming that he's heard many legal scholars because, as you must know, Mark Donald Trump is very attuned to the intricacies of the world of legal. See, exactly, legal scholars, hangs out with legal scholars, that this case shouldn't have even been brought. Can you discuss why this case should have been brought, and why it is especially strong? So I actually saw this post, not tweet, whatever it is that he posted, and then he said it orally this morning. So it actually looking for the legal scholars, like I was trying to figure out like who the hell is even talking about. So it's like Jonathan Turley, he mentioned, of course, which was like the rubber stamp for any conservative position. Yeah, fine, Jonathan Turley is just Michael and Dell with tenure, right? Like if Jonathan Turley made pillows and didn't have a guaranteed job at George Washington Law School, like you'd be like the same guy. You'd be like, yeah, which right, like which one is like somewhere below Overstock. Calm guy would be Jonathan Turley. Like, look, there is no legal scholar who knows anything about campaign finance law, who knows anything about New York criminal law, who thinks that this case shouldn't have been brought. This is a relatively straightforward case, which is why Donald Trump is so panicked about it. Because, as you pointed out, it is pretty much without doubt had an affair with Stormy Daniels, as you point out. The timing of it is somewhat inconvenient for the Father of the Year award, that he also, let's not forget, had an affair with another woman. That other woman was paid hush money by the National Enquirer. How do we know that? Because the National Enquirer will say, publisher will say that that's what happened, and Stormy Daniels would pay much money. How do we know that? Because there are checks to Stormy Daniels, signed by Donald Trump, and Michael Cohen will testify that. So the underlying backs around this are actually not in dispute, so I don't think that he's going to win. On the legal scholar front, I suspect that his lawyers are gonna have to come up with something better than that, whatever it may be. So no, he does not have the legal community on his side. He's got one or two Republican hack TV attorneys on his side, who run apology tours for right-wing conmen and frauds, so it's no surprise that they've suddenly proven useful to Donald Trump. And of course, Trump ends off by crying foul and framing himself as the victim here, even repeating his usual refrain of accusing the judge of committing election interference. The fact that Donald Trump is a political candidate is not licensed for him to commit crimes with impunity. Trump would be on trial, regardless of whether he was a political candidate or not. So no, Trump doesn't get to claim that any effort to hold any politician accountable is akin to election interference. It is simply the judicial system working exactly as it should, with someone who happens to be a political candidate, just as it would with any other American. No one is above the law in this country, even someone so self-important as Donald Trump. The fact is that Trump, who committed not one, not two, not three, but 34 felonies, is presenting himself as the victim. Let's be clear, no one forced Trump to break the law. He is a grown-ass man. He makes his own decisions. The law prohibiting campaign finance violations has been around for a really long time, and Trump knew that law well, which is why he funneled the money through Michael Cohen and coded it as a legal expense, knowing full well that it was an illegal campaign expense, meaning this prosecution was absolutely predictable. When you break the law, you should be prepared to answer for it. That's not Judge Marchand's fault. It's not Joe Biden's fault. It's not the Democrats' fault. It is his fault. And instead of whining in his little post-trial press conferences because he isn't above the law, you might consider taking some responsibility for it. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to the channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads. I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen, too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.